You're a wizard, Diablo.
Congratulations.
The wizard is a ranged class that focuses on elemental damage and comboing their skills together to deal massive damage to all of their enemies. It's a fun ranged class, really focusing on that elemental damage and applying those effects to enemies. And today we're going to go through how you play this class, some skills, some attributes, some gems to look out for, and some other little tidbits as well. So let's go. This class guide series is designed to get you familiar with a class in Diablo Immortal, how to play them and level them up. Also, if you're really enjoying this series, why not hit that subscribe button or even the like button? It really helps me out. Thank you for that. So how you play this class. Now, this is a fun ranged class with some more flashy options compared to the Demon Hunter, which is the other ranged class. This class is magical, where the Demon Hunter is a physical class. Comboing abilities together here is key, and your first combos will be Scorch and Arcane Wind, which will create that firestorm effect that you will often see pop up on the screen. Most of your abilities will have some sort of an interaction with this class, and that's what makes them really interesting and unique compared to some of the other classes, how you combo them together, whether you're creating that firestorm or even freezing enemies and then exploding them with fire. Whatever you're working with there's plenty of options to interact together, and you can be applying those effects like freezing and setting things on fire and even stripping their armor in some regards. It's a really fun class to experiment with. Always stay at range when you are playing as the wizard, because you will have low health and we have low mobility unless you're running the teleport option, but you can't move and attack like the Demon Hunter, so playing at that range is really helpful to stay back in the back line. Just keep dealing all that damage, and all of your attacks are ranged, so you never really have to go into the close range either, so it works out perfectly. The best skills for the wizard, we'll start out with Magic Missile, and this is just your basic primary attack that launches a missile that does X amount of damage to whatever target you're hitting. This is single target. Now, I actually kind of like the Electrocute, which is the alternative primary attack. Now, this does comparable damage, it does do less, but it also does AoE, so it will hit additional targets for 30% of the total damage that it does do. Now, both of these are really good. I don't think there's any one better than the other compared to the other classes where it's usually pick one. Both I really kind of like. I'm more leaning towards using Magic Missile because of the higher single target damage, especially for boss fights. It's more valuable, but Electrocute is also a very good option. Scorch is our next attack. Now, Scorch will launch a flaming orb in front of you that will knock enemies back and leave a burning trail on the ground and set enemies on fire for that period. You want to be comboing this with our next skill, Arcane Wind, which unleashes a blast of wind in the direction that you do shoot it at, and it will also knock enemies away. But when you hit enemies that are already burning, it will deal an extra 50% damage to them, which will increase your damage potential for hitting targets in that straight line that both of these attacks do. In this footage, I'm wearing a chest piece that gets rid of the wind-up time for Arcane Wind. It also adds a chill effect to it, so my attack might look a little bit different to yours does wherever you're at in the game. The next skill is Ice Crystal. Now, this conjures up a giant ice crystal at a nearby location. It'll deal damage to anyone that's inside it, as well as applying a chill effect. You can press the activate button again to explode it and deal additional damage to those targets. However, we don't want to do that. We want to keep it up, keep that ice crystal standing where it is, because we want to combo with Disintegrate. Now, Disintegrate is a beam of pure energy that will hit anything that is in that straight line effect. Now, if you hit this on the ice crystal, the beam will bounce off of it and actually hit any enemies all around you. Bouncing off the ice crystal, this will absolutely melt enemies. Now, it does do a slightly less damage when you are bouncing it off the ice crystal, but it still doesn't matter. It just literally melts enemies. It's an insane amount of damage, and the longer you hold down Disintegrate, the more damage it will do. It does do increased damage over time, so you want to be making sure that you're using your entire charge at one time, just really stacking up that extra damage increase so that you can melt through the enemy. You can also combine this with Ray of Frost to do the exact same thing. That works exactly the same. Any of those beam attacks, you can bounce off your ice crystal to hit enemies in around you, and it just means you don't have to aim it as well, which just was really helpful. Now, optionally, if you are struggling with movement, you want to be able to move a little bit more, especially considering in some cases you're really just like running in between objectives. You can run Teleport, which just teleports you forward. You get 3 charges for this. It's on a relatively low cooldown, so you can pick this up if you just want to move around a bit quickly, though I just prefer to run just straight damage abilities rather than having a movement skill for this class, because you're going to be at ranged pretty much all of the time anyway. There's no real reason to run a movement skill. You can just position yourself away from enemies, especially if you're running group content. You can avoid most of the damage that's coming towards you if you position correctly. The attributes you should be looking out for as a wizard is Intelligence and Fortitude. Because all gear is like random, I can't really tell you exactly what pieces you should be getting, but really these are the 2 things that you want to look out for. Intelligence is your primary stat. This increases your damage and your combat rating. Anything that increases your damage, like straight damage, is absolutely well worth having. And Fortitude is your secondary stat. This increases your armor penetration, which increases how much damage you do ultimately, as well as your combat rating. So they're the 2 stats you want to look out for on all of your gear. Anything that has these in high values, you should absolutely put them on and wear them. Don't forget to upgrade your gear at the blacksmith as well, because you can easily just transfer your ranks into new gear. Same goes for gems, which we'll talk about right now. For your standard normal gems in the red category, you want to look out for tourmaline. This gives you a straight damage buff. Isn't really much more to say here. For the blue category, sapphire is great because it gives you armor penetration. For the yellow category, it doesn't really matter that much. None of the yellow gems are really that good. All resistance is great and potency is okay, so either or is really good to you. For legendary gems, there's a couple that you should look out for. Everlasting Torment is absolutely great to have, as it just gives you extra damage anytime you crit. This really fits in like any build, so absolutely pick this up if you can. Berserker's Eye is also good for this class. Now this increases the damage that you do by 5%. It also increases the damage you take by 5%, but because we are a ranged class, you can avoid a lot of that damage anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much if you are going to take extra damage. You just need to work on your positioning in some of those scenarios, so you can pick this up and just give yourself a straight damage increase. Bloody Reach is also super important for this class because the further away from enemies you are, the more damage you do, so Bloody Reach is really helpful to increase your damage overall when you are at those ranged targets. And all these gems are craftable as well, so you can just craft them as you do see fit. And realistically, as I've said in these guides, any legendary gem that you find during leveling, as long as it's giving you some kind of a benefit, you may as well just put it on because you can always replace it later. So the only ones you maybe want to avoid are things that like increasing your damage resistance or even taunting enemies. Definitely avoid those, but realistically just put on any legendary gems that you do have and then use any spares that you have to just upgrade the gems that you do like and the ones that we mentioned earlier. That'll really help your build come together. Some quick leveling tips for you guys as a wizard. When you are running just general content, running teleport just to help you zoom around the area will absolutely help, because a lot of times when you're just questing, you're just really running from A to B and killing a couple of mobs, and teleport can help speed up that process a little bit because you can actually get over there much quicker, but realistically it's up to you. I personally just have been running very slowly in all of my characters so far, but anyway, this class really excels when running group content, because if you have a class like a Crusader or a Monk that have those abilities that can really group up enemies and bring them together, then this really sees a lot of benefits for you and your Ice Crystal and Disintegrate combo when you're bringing those two together to bounce it off. And the more beams you have bouncing in between enemies, the more damage you'll do, the more AoE potential you have, and just the better it will become as you do get into some of the rifts and the dungeon kind of content that you will be running. If you're really struggling as to how you should play this class, checking the recommended paths is always valuable to do. There are tons of good information in there about giving you general build ideas. I don't give you like super specifics about how to actually build and play a class, but there's a lot of really good information in the recommended builds, things to look out for like gems and gear and abilities and stuff to use. It's really interesting, and I think the recommended path system is really cool. And also, while you're in that leveling process, don't be afraid to experiment. This is one of the few classes where practically all of the skills are actually useful in some regard, and there is benefits to almost all of them. So experiment, try the different skills you get, and you will definitely see success as a wizard, as it's very fun to combo the abilities together and try different things as this class. Check out my other class guides that I will have linked in the description down below. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.